What's up guys, Peter Valley here. This is a very important video about book restrictions. I'm going to tell you the story about how I was restricted from selling almost all books, how I recovered, how long it took me to recover, and this is going to be relevant for you if you're facing restrictions in the books category. Pay attention to these books you see here, all of these books, particularly these law books in this box here. So this is a story about how I got restricted from selling most books, exactly what I did to recover, exactly how you can recover. I'm going to dispel some myths about restrictions in the books category because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of doomsday talk that just simply isn't accurate, as I've proven over the last few months. So what I'm going to do is go in the other room here and sit down. I'm going to tell you the whole story. All right, story time. So here's the story. I'm driving across the country, 6-week road trip. I'm accumulating tons of books. I think it was like 800 books or something. And it wasn't specifically a book sourcing trip, but I just accumulated a bunch of books. And one of the highlights was in Missoula, I had a friend who worked in a building at the University of Montana. I won't say any names because it'll be incriminating. And she was mentioning to me like, hey, there's like this weird room in the basement that has tons of books. You could just come and take them. And she had keys to the building. So we go in there at like midnight and we're like creeping through. It's this huge building. We're like going through, winding through all these different, and we get in the basement and there's a ton of books. And it's just nothing of value. Like I think I took like 2 books. So that was kind of a dud. So as we're leaving, winding our way through this huge building, we get to like a stairwell and I look over and there's just a giant pile of books, just like literally on the floor. And I was like, what are those? She's like, oh, those are free. I should have mentioned those. So I start going through the actual value of these books on average, you guys, literally around $100. I mean, almost every book I'm scanning was like $90, $120, somewhere north of $200. These are all recent-ish law textbooks. And I've got, Scoutly set up, so it shows me if I'm restricted from an item, and I'm cleared to sell every single book that I'm scanning, almost all of them. And so I'm scanning. And I'm sitting back and I'm like, there's like $15,000 worth of books here. So I tell my friend, I was like, listen, let's just back your car up to the nearest exit and let's just start shoveling stuff in. And she's like, I don't know. She's like, look, I'm one of the only people that has keys to this building. Like if they come in the morning, they see the books are gone, like it might reflect on me and da-da-da. She's like, it's like I'm not in a position to argue. So she's like, look, let's just do this. Let's compromise. Just fill one box. And there's like all these boxes. She's like, just fill one box to the brim and let's just basically as much as you can carry and let's just leave with that. And I was like, I was like, we'll negotiate later, but for now, okay. So I fill up a box and I'm like really breaching the limits here. I'm like, it's like a very overflowing box. And again, the average price is value for these books is probably $100, if not a little more. And so I'm excited. So I get back to the car, put them in the car, leave town the next day. So I've got these really expensive law books. There's probably literally so there's like probably $2,000 worth of books there. And then I've got all the other hundreds of books in the back seat. I get home several days later and I go to list the books and I'm really excited about the law textbooks. So I start with those and I go to list the first law textbook and it says I'm restricted. In Scan Lister it said, request permission to sell or whatever. So I click that. I'm thinking, oh, well, that's weird because I checked this initially, but I guess I just need to it's just one of those things where you just click approve and you're automatically approved. And I click over to get approval and it requests invoices. And I was like, what? I was just allowed to sell this literally 3 days ago. So I go to the next law textbook, same result, asking for invoices. I start scanning, you guys. I'm not allowed to sell a single law textbook I was allowed to sell just a few days before. I get to the other books, I am restricted from selling about 60% of them. That might even be generous. It might be more like 70%. 60 to 70% cannot sell, and they're asking for invoices. Not just click, get approved. Invoices. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like I'm losing it because this is unprecedented. So I'm just sitting back thinking, what would possibly cause my restrictions to increase so dramatically in a span of just 3 days? Like what could possibly account for this? And then I remembered something that had happened about 2 days before. I was on my trip back. I check email in the morning. I get this wall of emails, about 20 of them, that said something like sold, ship now. These were emails from Amazon. And there were emails for merchant fulfilled sales. But here's the thing, you guys, I don't sell anything merchant fulfilled. So I'm just utterly baffled. I go into my account, sure enough, I've got 20 sales. And I was able to piece together that a lot of you guys know I run a repricing tool called NeuroPrice. One of our developers, there's 3 of them, one of our developers had been creating some listings in my account for testing purposes. And he didn't delete them. He didn't realize they were actually live listings. So he left these merchant fulfilled listings live, and I got sales for these books that I didn't own. And then I was left to suffer the consequence. So I had all these sales. So I'd immediately go on my account and like cancel, 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 which is, it's a really bad look, bad experience for the buyer, et cetera, et cetera. So I immediately got put under like the banner. It's like your account is at risk of deactivation. I was like, oh, and there's nothing I can do. All I can do is just send a big email to Amazon, just groveling, right? There's nothing I can do. So, fortunately, after a month or so, the deactivation warning goes away, and my metrics are back in good place. But anyway, going back to listing those books, I realized that's what it was. My metrics got dinged because of these merchant fulfilled sales, and Amazon. My account is, you guys, my account is from 2007. That is 17 years old. My account, the trust I built up with the Amazon over 17 years, gone with one misstep. And I was back to a level of restrictions that probably, it might have even been worse than what newer sellers face. It was really, really bad. Like I said, 60% is being generous. It might have been like 70% of books or so that I was restricted from selling. So nothing I can do. I mean, I just have to just ride this out. I don't know if this is permanent. I don't know anything. My business life is flashing before my eyes. And so I do these were the lessons come in. So I do two things. So the first lesson is that Amazon can roll back your restrictions at any time like that, and it's going to be oftentimes due to you doing something wrong. Amazon decides they don't trust you temporarily, as we'll get to, temporarily, and so they restrict your ability to sell a bunch of books. Okay, so that's number one. The second thing I did, while I'm restricted and I can barely sell anything, I list the books I can sell, I ship them in, I got 70% or 60 whatever percent left that I can't sell, I stick them in a closet. And I don't just give up. This is what most people do. They're like, oh, I'm restricted for most books. Okay, well, that sucks. My business is over. Everything's over. I'm going back to working at Burger King or whatever. That's what most people do. Or if you're a newer seller, you see the level of restrictions you face when you're newer, and you just go, oh, well, this sucks. This business is garbage. I'm going somewhere else. This is the lesson. I kept sourcing and I kept listing. And I did that solid, and it was painful, you guys. Almost every book I scan, it's like the little pink in Scout Leader, it's like restricted. I couldn't sell anything, and I just kept buying. Not only did I keep buying the books I could sell, I kept buying restricted books. I kept buying the books I was not allowed to sell, and I just stick them in my closet. The theory was this can't last forever. My account's 17 years old. Amazon has to decide they trust me again eventually, and when they do, I'm going to have this treasure chest of valuable books. So I kept sourcing. I didn't give up. I kept shipping, sourcing for 4 months under the most extreme level of restrictions I'd ever seen. I just kept doing it, sourcing, shipping. And one day I started noticing, I'm scanning, I'm like, I'm allowed to sell most books all of a sudden. Maybe it's just a fluke. So I get home, I pull the law books out, the ones I just showed you. I pull the box of law textbooks out, and I'm like, this will decide whether my restrictions have been lifted. And I go to scan one, and it says you're restricted. And I was like, oh. Then I click request approval, and then it says approval has been granted instantly. I got instant approval. And the message said, and you guys have seen this, the message says, based on your seller performance, we are allowing you to sell books from this publisher, or something like that. It very explicitly says, due to your performance. You guys, if I had not been consistently shipping and sourcing and shipping for the 4 months that I was experiencing extreme restrictions, I would have never gotten the restrictions back. They never would have been lifted, because Amazon needs to see that you're selling items, and that you're fulfilling those items. The customers are happy. They need to see that you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. They can trust you again. So you're just building up trust with Amazon. So that's why if you get hit with ruthless restrictions, either if you're an old seller or if you're a newer seller and you're facing that right out of the gate, the only solution is to just source and ship. Just keep doing it. And eventually you'll trip over some invisible wire of like metrics where Amazon's like, all right, we trust this person. And that's what I did. And the other lesson is, if you're seeing restricted books, keep sourcing them, buy them, put them in your closet, and just wait. Now, a lot of you may not have the capital to be able to like invest in a bunch of books. You don't know if you'll be able to sell anytime soon. I get that. But if you can afford it, source restricted books. The exceptions would be books that very few people are allowed to sell, like, like certain textbooks from like the big publishers. Like there's certain books I won't even touch now, and I'll probably never get approved. But man, am I glad I had 800 books in my closet ready to go once I got lifted. So some really important lessons there. Again, source and ship, and these restrictions do get lifted. There's so much doomsday talk on Amazon. It's like, oh, I got restricted, I can't sell anything. It's like, that's not a static state. You can bounce back from that. You just have to build your trust up with Amazon. And I bet if you think about what happened just before you suffered a bunch of restrictions, you realize, oh, you actually did something to ding your seller metrics. So I'm thrilled that I powered through this and I didn't give up. I've seen a lot of Amazon sellers give up. And the message is, don't give up. Just rebuild your trust with Amazon or build it from scratch, and you'll be allowed to sell almost everything.